Here's what's coming up on today's show.
But scaling the business really came from getting the knowledge and spending the money on the team. That is my biggest expense, and it's not an expense, it's an asset, because everyone on the team generates revenue, and whatever they do, they're generating revenue.
This is the Balanced Growth Show with Dr. Travis Perry, helping successful business professionals like you achieve balance in their lives.
Welcome to another episode of the Balanced Advisor podcast. I'm Dr. Perry, your host. Today we are with Lance Drucker. Lance is the CEO of Drucker Wealth, a third-generation financial planning firm. Lance is a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and his firm, Drucker Wealth, is one of the premier planning first firms in the country. Welcome, Lance, to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm looking forward to a conversation today.
Absolutely. It's been fun to get to know you a little bit in the pre-show. Before we dive into everything balance and growth, how'd you get into this industry? You had a dad who was, a part of the industry as an advisor, as a life insurance salesman. But tell us, how did that drive you to where you're at today?
I mean, I think it was pretty much or preordained, because I'm fairly certain from what my parents told me that I was conceived at a insurance company convention at a Florida resort. So, really, where are you going from there? I grew up in the business. I watched my dad have a nice life, have a balanced life that he did well. I would say upper middle class, drove nice cars and took nice trips. And, but he was always paid attention to money and, living the millionaire next door type of life. So, I saw that. I grew up in that. And for whatever reason, when I went to college initially, I was thinking about maybe I wanted to be a dentist. I don't know why. I have nothing to do with teeth, and I'm really not that good with my hands. And then I realized, what am I doing? I don't really like science that much. And I think I really want to go into this business. So I graduated college in 1985 and came into this wondrous business of ours.
And how did you do that? Where did you start? Were you with your father's company? Did you decide to jet set on your own? Tell us that way.
Nepotism is a good thing. I pretty much learned everything at my dad's feet. He was a smart guy and he was successful. So, for good or bad, I just did everything he did. And it was a lot of hustle and late nights and working weekends. And, I started on the life insurance side. And fortunately, I've been gifted with a good mouth. And I believe in it, life insurance. So we sold a good amount of it. And, Bill Gates says you don't learn that much from your wins. And I was winning. And then somebody who ended up becoming a coach said, what would you do if they outlawed the sale of life insurance? I said, I'd probably have to sell shoes at Tom McCann because I really don't have any other skill sets. And he said, well, you may want to think about that. So now again, I only did what Dad did, which was good because it got me to the dance fast, but it didn't really do a lot in helping me grow. And it was only after, I hit a modicum of success that I started reaching out to other people. And I said, there's probably other stuff here. And also, selling insurance, while I think it's important, it didn't feed my soul. What I really was enjoying was the investment side, the dark side. And I started to morph more into that. And the more I did that, the more I was speaking with other people, hiring other coaches, consultants who allowed me to grow my business in a completely different direction. And, Dad was totally fine with that. He said, hey, go do. But, I think more than anything, Dad taught me to fish as opposed to giving me the fish because there was none of that. And then, but if we're going to be honest, I started at first base, which is not a bad place to start.
No, I think what you did and how your dad taught you to be successful has helped you craft Drucker Wealth today, right? It seems like that has been the foundation.
You know what? I saw Dad was a hard worker. I think one of my favorite words in life is grit. Angela Duckworth in her book of that name. The beautiful thing about grit, it's not how smart you are. It's not how connected you are. It's basically how hard are you willing to work and stick to it. And I saw that from my dad. And, frankly, that I was very fortunate that carried over to me. And thank God it carried over to the third generation. Because I warned him, he better not be the one who screws it up. And, it does not, he's going in the right direction.
Yeah, I love that. So tell us a little bit about balance. Everybody has a different definition, analogy, way of describing it for themselves. For you, what would you say, Lance, is when you feel balanced, fill in the blank?
So it was my first couple of years in the business, and I was fortunate enough when I was more on the insurance side that I made and went to $1 million roundtable conference in New Orleans. And, I didn't have a lot of money, so I had a roommate, somebody I didn't know. And it was a gentleman a little bit older than me at the time from El Paso. And we got to talking. He said every day at 4:00, he would walk down his hill and go to the fishing hole. And I said, what did you do? He goes, I fished. I said, for how long? He goes, until I didn't feel like fishing anymore. I said, did you go back to the office? He goes, why would I do that? I was done for the day. I said, how are you done at 4:00? I don't understand. You see, I was working till 8 or 9 o'clock every night. And he said, I just made a decision. That's the life I wanted to have. And that was kind of really, like you don't have to work till 8 o'clock. And he said, maybe I won't have the big car and the fancy house and travel in all the fancy places, but I'm happy. And that really resonated with me. So I started thinking about that a lot. And I asked, I started to make lists of, what was important to me. And, I got married kind of young. I was 24 when I met my wife, 26 when we got married. And I know one of the things you talk about is shared values and goals. And that is I'm 34 years into this marriage. And, I think we'll probably both, stay. But it's because we had shared values and goals and what we wanted. And what was really important to both of us was building the solid foundation, number one. We knew we were going to have a family. And to have, for me, balance was if I was going to have kids, if I wasn't going to be there to change diapers and go to their recitals and their soccer games and coach the games and meet their friends, what was I doing? And that was for the family. So balance meant time to spend with my family and not just on Saturday mornings. It was all the time during the week. And, I was fortunate. We had a very traditional family. My wife, she didn't have a career per se, but, we both decided we wanted her home with the kids. And fortunately, this great business of ours afforded us the income that we could afford to do that. It would have been nice, to have a little bit more income, but, how much do you need? So I think balance meant being there for the kids. That was the first thing. The second part of balance for me is, personal. It can't just be about my family. It had to be a little bit about me. And, at the time I was a competitive tennis player. I say competitive, I like to play, and I was playing 4-6 times a week, and I would play in tournaments, and, I enjoyed it. I like the competition. I think that's hardwired into me, and it was great. And I had to make time for that. So I was either playing at 10:30 at night once the kids were asleep, or I found a group of people that were willing to play at 6 a.m. So, we'd go onto the courts, indoor courts. It was cold. It was dark, but, we were sweaty. We played. So I was able to get in the things that were important to me, which was that, and working out and staying physically fit because, I think our industry, maybe a lot of other industries, but definitely ours, it can be a very lonely, business. It's just you. You got people around you, but you're in the trenches. And if your mind isn't right and you don't have the energy, the physicality to do what we do, it gets tough. So balance meant time with my wife, time with my kids, and time for me. And I was fortunate that throughout my life, my interest went from tennis. Then I got into another martial art called Krav Maga, which is this Israeli crazy hand-to-hand fighting. And I got, pretty good in that. And then I went somewhere again because I got into shooting, skeet shooting, tactical shooting. And I get sucked into this other world and it was fighting. And a lot of the fighting went to the ground and I had no idea what I was doing. I thought I was having a heart attack. Somebody was sitting on my chest. I said, I better start figuring out this other thing. And that's what got me into this Brazilian jiu-jitsu, which I now train that 5-6 days a week, because it's so important. So balance is having, my definition, and I'm sure everybody's has their own, is the ability to have time for yourself, for your family, and for the things that matter to you. And the beauty of this business, it's given me that opportunity to do all of that.
What a great definition. You hit on some really key things there, shared values and goals. Just reminded yesterday, I was at a conference, my wife and I were actually attending, and we were just recognizing some research by Dr. John Gottman, who really set me on the track of focusing on shared values. And that was my whole dissertation. But one thing that you mentioned there is it keeps you together, doesn't it? It allows you to have something that is the same. It's this overlap. This is what we believe in. This is how we keep it together. So congratulations on sticking with it. I know.
You know what? I don't know that it was a
great
conscious,
example.
I mean, sticking together is a conscious thing, but the shared values, if you know, in our business, we deal with a lot of people's lives and, you know, a ridiculous amount of divorce. And yes, every once in a while it's because of cheating or philandering or money, but more often than not, frankly, I think it's just about they want different things. You know, I can't stay awake in a movie theater. Literally, I haven't seen a movie in a decade. I fall asleep. So, you know, if my wife said, well, I really want to go to movies and I'm falling asleep, that would have been a problem. So now it could take me 3 nights to watch something on Netflix, but I will watch it. But, you know, she's accepting of that. And, you know, the things she wants to do, you know, as much as I can. So I think it's that, but you know, we're grandparents now. I have a 10-month-old grandson, and my daughter's due with number 2. That's the best part of our life. And, you know, they say having a grandkid is the gift you get for putting up with your kids'
That's right.
issues, problems throughout the year. So it gets better. I promise you that.
You're great. This is really good, important information because I think a lot of people think, oh, money is the number one cause of divorce. And quite honestly, I've debunked that several times. The research shows that that money is the biggest cause of an argument, the longest argument, the most heated of all types of arguments. However, shared goals and values, on the other hand, if they had that together, would allow them to grow together instead of growing apart and allowing money to be the thing that really breaks the camel's back, so to speak.
Sure.
So I can see how a lot of advisors, you know, you see this firsthand, but you're really astute to understand this idea. The other thing that you mentioned is that your health, right? Being there for your kids, grandkids, and your own personal health. Like, I think those go hand in hand. Because if you're not healthy, you die at your desk, you know, it's over. What do you do?
You can't get down on the ground to play with your grandson.
That's right.
You know, it's very unfortunate. And, you know, but even the shared values, you know, we live in a lovely community. I have a nice home, but it's not the biggest home. And this was something, you know, we were looking for homes. I said, well, why couldn't, you know, we can afford to live there. I said, you're absolutely right. We can. I don't know how she even knew that, but she did. But that's not going to happen because that's going to put us in a situation that's going to create stress for me personally and for us as a couple. I cannot let that happen. And as a result, I said, we're going to live in a lovely home. We're going to do nice things and drive nice cars, but we will never put ourselves in a financial situation where we're working for that. It's got to be the other way around. You know, and now it's funny. The other day J. Crew had a 70% off sale and I'm on there. I like, you know, buying stuff. And then I realized, what am I doing? I haven't worn my last 2 sweaters that I bought. You know, whenever I bought them, I don't need, and I said, you know what? We need to simplify.
Yeah, you're smart. The millionaire next door idea that you were talking about your father.
Door. That is my Bible. I love that book. It basically validated my dad's whole thought process.
Yep. Love this.
Yeah.
So you've been very successful. You've taken your dad's road and you can see those values have helped you in your life. Tell us, how have you been able to scale your business to the capacity that you're at right now?
We're very fortunate that I've had good coaching, pretty much from the get-go. Most of which I've paid for out of my own pocket. But, you know, this is our business, you know, financial advising, financial planning, insurance, investments, whoever you're speaking to, is a very unique business, is that our cost of goods sold is Zippo. It's nothing. We don't have a manufacturing plant. We don't have a distribution. It's nothing. So the only thing we could spend money on is knowledge or building a team around you. So once that had been drilled into my rather thick head, you know, I spent a lot of time and money on coaching. Most of it was great. Some of it wasn't, but even the stuff that wasn't, I had to ask, why wasn't it? What didn't it do? Which helped me be smarter in hiring my next coach. Because I am a big fan of, you know, I ain't that smart. And there are a lot of really smart people. And all I got to do is find out who they are and then pay them for their knowledge. It's amazing. People will tell you everything you need to know if you're patient and willing to pay them for their time. So first it was the coaching, which brought me, one of my coaches said, Lance, every day, the way you're running your business, it's like a brand new show. They say it's got to be the same show. You can tweak and adjust it, but it's the same show. And that was mind blowing. Secondly, you need to pay people to do the things that you don't need or want to do. So, it's their 4 quadrants. This I got from the book Traction. We hired EOS. We have an EOS implementer who's wonderful, Mark Dispenza. And, we're currently still working with them. And they talk about things you love to do and things you're great at. Things you're great at, but you don't love to do, all the way down to the 4th quadrant, things I am lousy at and I don't like to do. And and that I only heard recently, but intuitively, the things that I wasn't great at and I didn't like to do, I wanted to pay somebody to do them. So we started hiring a team. And what I was looking for wasn't necessarily somebody who was proficient in our business, because I can't remember who said it, but somebody said, we don't hire great employees, we create and develop great employees. So that's been our mantra. Show me somebody who's smart, who's committed, who's willing to learn and is humble. We'll get them there. And we've done a really great job of getting some really great people. So we started building out the team. And as we grew, as we hit different metrics, we would add on either from an operational side or forward facing. Now we're at a point where my son Gideon, he's the 3rd generation. He's been in this now for about 5 years. He took a little detour after college, at graduation. He graduated in the top, 5% of his class from Lehigh University in Pennsylvania. And at graduation, he says, Dad, I got to talk to you. Something I'm thinking about doing. And to make a long story short, he spent 3 years as a paratrooper in the Israeli military. The whole list of reasons why that and why there, but that's what he did. And when he, left the service, he said, all right, I'm ready. And he was real. He got a CFP pretty early and, a number of other designations. And he said, hey, I want you to teach me, but I gotta learn to fish. I cannot have you feeding me fish. Otherwise, what's the point? We all have egos. And I said, go for it. So he wrote his book. He was dealing with a lot of what's become termed Henrys, high earners, not rich yet. And we ended up patenting the Henry syndrome, because it actually is a syndrome. I wrote a book years ago called the Bag Lady Syndrome, because I was dealing with a lot of women who were telling me that, I'd say, what keeps you up at night? Like, what's your biggest fear? And I kept hearing over and over, I don't want to be, the best dressed bag lady in my neighborhood. And when I first heard it, I was like 24, 25. I didn't know what the hell they meant. It took me a little while to figure it out. But what they were saying, the women were saying in a lot of cases was, I'm independent. I don't want to lose that independence. So I wrote a book that how to avoid bag lady syndrome. And then Gideon started working with his clients, and his clients skewed younger. But he was dealing with a lot of people who were doing really well income wise. They were rich by income level, but they were poor by wealth level. And that comes from the psychology of money, the differentiator between rich and wealthy. So he wrote his book. And, since then, his division is the fastest growing part of our business from the standpoint of, new plans, new clients, and actual AUM, gathering and other things. So, we got real into, becoming a planning first firm, which was a whole other issue. But scaling the business really came from getting the knowledge and spending the money on the team. That is my biggest expense. And it's not an expense. It's an asset. Because everyone on the team generates revenue, and whatever they do, they're generating revenue.
So good. I know a lot of advisors have coaches, they have help, but truly your advice here is to coach up, to get the right kind of help, and then, invest in you, and then invest in your team. And those are phenomenal principles. If someone was struggling with hiring coaches, you've had several coaches. We've talked about them in the pre-show. What would you tell them? What would you tell them as an advisor that you ought to be doing and looking for in a good coach?
I think the most important thing is, what are my weaknesses? What are my biggest struggles? Is it running a business? Because I'm not really a good business person. Is it operational? Is it, I'm not seeing enough people. I don't know how to see enough people. And I think you will self-qualify what you're looking for. One of our coaches from the Sandler system, Glenn Mattson, I didn't need to be, go get them and here's how we're going to market. I didn't need that. What I needed was we were getting to the point where operationally we didn't have the dashboards. We didn't have a way of knowing what was coming in, what was going out. And he really helped, in the Sandler system, helped a lot with, creating a process. That's the key word, process. What I have since learned is if you don't have a process, then you're just kind of going willy-nilly. And the best thing that we've done is we've established processes for all of our, from the front end to operational to every aspect. And any time we have a problem that happens more than once, it's happens a couple of times, it's because we don't have a process. So I think it's figuring out what are my challenges. Is my challenge I don't have a good balance. I'm doing well, but I have no life. Well, then you may need, Dr. Travis Parry and his team coming in to work with you. If it's it's a sales issue, or I think different coaches do different things. And I think there are some really great people out there, and you'll know they're great because they've been around for a while. And, they will say, hey, can I speak to other people like me? And they say, absolutely. Here are 5 people. Feel free to go ahead and call them. And you have to call them. Everyone's got a fancy website now. And,
Yep.
So I think figure out what the problem is and then go out. And then I think you have to commit to it fully.
Yeah. And this is an aspect we haven't talked too much on this podcast, but most advisors I've interviewed have had coaches or are being coached. And it's a question that we actually are going to start asking for people who want to be on the show. Like, tell us about your coaching experience, because it says a lot about them as an advisor. And, like you mentioned, like, do your due diligence, but hire for something specific. If you need marketing, hire a marketing coach. If you need, internal processes like you were talking about, EOS, you need balance, Make Time Institute, right? Little plug. But, what's interesting, we do something similar to EOS in that we help advisors find what I call their work sweet spot. There are, those quadrants that EOS defines, but what we do is we start from top to bottom, every activity, and we help prioritize by basically priority through an exercise that Doug Carter taught me a long time ago. And I found that in those top 5 or 6 activities are the things that, guess what, they like to do and pay them the most. Everything else, we either delete, automate, or hire someone virtually and then in person to take care of. And if you can be in those top 5 or 6 activities, you're exactly in that quadrant.
It's a beautiful thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. So you've been able to scale and grow very well organically. You've written books, and I think that's part of it, right? That's part of what your secret has been, is becoming an expert. So what if advisors are out there and they're struggling? What could I become an expert in? You identified something. It sort of came to you. Your son identified an issue. It came to him. Do you think that happens with most advisors?
I think you need, everybody talks about creating a client advisory board. It's a great idea. Ask your clients, what do you think I do best? What's the best thing about what we do? And ask them, ask your friends, ask your family. I didn't come up with it. In fact, the worst coaching experience that I had, doesn't matter who, I won't mention his name, it was horrible. He was literally the Antichrist. It was a horrible experience. But he did ask me, he says, hey, what's unique about your clientele? And at the time, I didn't realize that. I hadn't really thought about it. I said, I work with a lot of women. Like, it wasn't like, I was happily married. It didn't do with that. It was just, it kind of evolved. They say when the husband passes away, 85% of the time, the wife switches advisors. We kind of became the firm that they switched advisors to. So we just had a lot of female clients. And he said, well, great, maybe you should write a book about. So he was a horrible coach, but that was something that I said, maybe there's something there. And then, we ended up blowing that out. And what's interesting, I think that what we're talking a little bit about is niche marketing. And a lot of people, myself included, they think, well, if I say I'm a specialist in working with women, or I'm a specialist in working with doctors, or I'm a specialist in working with people who have, Lhasa dogs. You think that nobody else will work with you. What's fascinating, and the studies have shown this, if you're in the target audience, you recognize it. If you're not, you don't care. It just, they won't say, well, I don't have a Lhasa. So yeah, it's no problem. We work with, people who don't have Lhasa too, so you're okay. They don't care. It doesn't affect the relationship even a little bit. But the people who do have the Lhasa or whatever your niche is, will again self-qualify themselves and seek you out.
This concept of niche marketing has been crucial. In fact, I've seen it in my own practice when I decided to write the book Achieving Balance for advisors. Yeah, did I take on a chiropractor? Did I go ahead and help an insurance agent who was in property and casualty? Sure, because they needed the help. However, all my marketing, my messaging, everything is for advisors. And I found that when I did that, I've actually had people reach out and say, hey, you need Travis because he works with advisors. And they actually become my prospecting, system. They're out there raving fans. They're telling other people about me.
Right.
And that's exactly what I think has been some of your top of funnel, offensive approach to finding organic clients. You were telling me before that you're getting 10, 20 leads a month from organic sources.
I am not getting 10 or 20.
Your son. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I'm the old guy. The only benefit of being old and I'm in my 37th year, 34 years married, 37 years in the business. We get into something, we stick. But what happens is, I do have a name. People know who we are at this point. And frankly, we have a really large clientele that we don't, that will just, things happen in their lives. They need help. They move, they divorce, they switch jobs, they sold a business. And so it keeps happening. But, we formed last year, 2 years ago, a colleague who was in my office, but separate entities. He basically was high level estate planning and insurance planning. And they did a great job and a really big business, but he wasn't doing anything that we were doing, the planning and the wealth management side. And he said, hey, why don't we do some joint work? I thought about it. I said, no, that's not going to work for me. He goes, really? Why not? I said, because what we're going to do is we're going to set up a separate entity, and it's going to be a joint business. And we did that. And his clientele was split between physicians and private equity, hedge fund, and investment banking clients. And it took a little while. It took 8 months, 10 months to kind of see our first trickle. And now it's phenomenal. So much so that we shut down the outside venture and we've done a soft merger where his firm is now part of our firm. And he is the managing partner on our estate and protection planning. And it's wonderful. And, I knew from day one this was going to work, but for my son, it was a little more challenging. And because he didn't want to give up the revenue. And I said, we're playing the long game here. You got me, you got, my father who's no longer with us. We play the long game in everything we do. In everything we do, we play the long game. It's not a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon. And what's happened is he is bringing in his clients are so happy to have somebody who's professionally handling their protection and estate planning. And he doesn't have any of that heavy lift on him now. One of the best things we ever did.
That's smooth. What a great idea. In fact, in estate planners, I will be starting to interview them and see how they are helping advisors have balance. That's interesting that you mentioned that. I just decided that yesterday. So that's beautiful. The other concept here I think you're really hitting on is like it's sticking power, staying power. This idea of keeping your integrity and holding to those values that really have made you is your long-term plan. Appreciate you mentioning that. If there's advisors out there who are struggling and they don't have balance or they're not able to grow while keeping balance like you've been able to do, what would be one or two things that you would give them some advice on?
I've threatened my kids over the last, 30 years. I'm out of the advice business. Don't call me anymore because you don't listen to me anyway. And I think that's the most frustrating thing about being a parent. You can give as much advice as you want. They will or won't listen. So I'm really not in the business of giving advice to anyone because everyone's got their own unique situations. But I guess what you have to really ask yourself, are you happy? And if you're not, why not? And then go from there. I am ecstatically happy. Like I am living my best life. I truly am. Like every day is just, I can't wait I'm up at 4:30. I'm bouncing out of bed. I can't wait to hit the day, do some emails, and then I go to my jujitsu where I get all these people who want to choke me and armbar me and do horrible things to me, and I let them. But, my goal is I know this is a clean podcast, but to suck a little bit less each day. That's it. And I think of, Jocko Willink. I don't know if you know who he is. He's got his own podcast, retired Navy SEAL commander. And I dig his whole thing. And he's all about motivation is great, but discipline is greater. Because I ain't always motivated. I'm not. Some days, Monday, I don't feel like speaking to clients sometimes. But the discipline of this is what I do and this is when I do it, that just goes a long way. So, what could you do to get balanced? I don't know. Figure out, are you happy? If you're happy, then I guess it doesn't matter. And if you're not, you got to ask yourself why, what's missing, and then write it down. And then find somebody who can either help you figure out, be it the Make Time Institute or whatever, to figure out what your path is, what your journey, and how you're going to get there. Because I will tell you this, I've been very fortunate. I built a solid financial, I think in terms of legacy now, I don't want for anything. I don't need anything. My kids are all doing great. So I think in terms of my grandkids, but more money was not going to make me happier. Being better at Brazilian jiu-jitsu, that would make me way happier. But I'm kind of limited there. I just took up surfing about 2 years ago. So I'm going to go to a surf camp in Costa Rica. If I cannot, get crushed or eaten by a shark, it's good. I want to be better at that. I'm not going to be doing triathlons. My knee's all effed up. So that ship has sailed. But, find out what makes you happy, figure it out, try different things, and then just go at it. And if that doesn't make you happy, find the next thing. Because there's a lot of cool things out there.
Thanks for being on the show today, Lance. We'll have to catch up on the Costa Rica thing. We're headed there next year. So I'm glad you found the light of surfing. And it's been delightful to have you on the show.
Thank you very much, Travis. I appreciate it. I think you're doing God's work out there because, too many people, they just get sucked into that morass of I got to make more, I need more, and then I'll be happy. And unfortunately, That's just not how it works.
Oh, I 100% agree. That's what we're doing here at the Make Time Institute. If you guys love this as much as we did, like, share, subscribe, send this to someone who might need the words of Lance and his wisdom today, even though he no longer gives advice. He has some great advice on the show. I've really been inspired by his ideas of hiring people that, can do better, get coached up, stay in the long game, and many more nuggets that we were able to drop on this podcast today. So I hope you enjoyed as much as we did. Remember, as you're achieving balance, live life on purpose.